The candle flame trembles. Not from wind, there are no windows here, but from something older. Something that lives in the stone itself. This is the medieval world. Not the one painted in tapestries or sung in ballads. This is the world that bled. The world that rotted. The world where survival was a profession, and death was the employer who never slept. Picture a castle at dusk. The kind tourists never see. The walls aren't golden, they're the color of ash and old blood. The courtyard smells of iron and manure. Somewhere, a bell tolls, not for prayer, for the dying. In this world, men did not simply work. They offered themselves, body and breath, to the fire, to the earth, to the plague, to the executioner's stone where the blood never fully washed away. There were no insurance policies, no safety regulations written in leather-bound law. There was only the contract, spoken or signed. It made no difference. A contract that promised coin, bread, perhaps a roof, and in return it asked for one simple thing: your life. Not metaphorically, not eventually, not in the distant, comfortable future where old age might take you gently in sleep. No. These jobs demanded death as collateral. They required it. The way a blacksmith requires iron. The way a church requires sin. Before we continue, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from. The medieval economy ran on more than grain and gold. It ran on bodies, on men willing to descend into cesspits that could suffocate them in minutes, on women who handled the plague-ridden dead, their own skin blistering before the week was out, on boys sent into mine shafts so narrow their ribs pressed against stone, digging until the mountain claimed them as its own. These were not accidents, not tragedies whispered about in shocked tones over Sunday stew. This was the design, the system, the unspoken understanding that some men were born to build kingdoms, and others were born to die building them. The taster who swallowed poison meant for kings, the executioner who carried the sins of justice on his blade and his soul, the plague doctor who walked into homes already thick with the smell of death, knowing the door might not open for him again, the miner buried alive, his scream swallowed by the dark, the gong farmer drowning in human waste, methane burning his lungs in the suffocating black. Each of them signed the same contract, written not in ink, but in desperation, in hunger, in the cold mathematics of survival that said, better to risk death tomorrow than starve today. The lords did not mourn them. The church did not canonize them. History did not remember their names. But their hands built the cathedrals. Their blood fed the fields. Their silence made possible the feasts, the festivals, the markets, the kingdoms rising proud against the sky. Tonight, we descend into that world, not as tourists, not as scholars with clean hands and distant pity, but as witnesses to the men and women who knew every morning they woke that death was not a possibility. It was a colleague, a shadow, a condition of employment. This is the story of 10 medieval jobs where death was not a risk. It was part of the contract. The candle still trembles, and in its light we see them, the forgotten, the poisoned, the buried, the drowned, the ones who paid for history with their lives. Let us begin. The taster, poison on the tongue. The silver spoon feels heavier than it should. It is morning in the castle. The great hall smells of roasted meat and fresh bread, of honey and wine brought from distant vineyards. The table is a landscape of excess, pheasant glazed in orange, pies cracked open to reveal steam, berries glistening like jewels in cream. But before the king lifts a single morsel to his lips, another man must eat first. His name does not matter. History swallowed it long ago. What matters is his position, his purpose, his contract, signed in desperation 3 winters past when his children were starving and the village had nothing left to give. He is the taster. And every meal is a gamble with death. He stands beside the table, dressed in simple wool that marks him as servant but not slave. His hands are steady. They have to be. Any tremor, any hesitation, and the court will whisper. Whispers become suspicions. Suspicions become accusations, and accusations in the medieval world become gallows. The steward nods. It is time. He reaches for the wine first. The goblet is gold, encrusted with rubies that catch the morning light. Inside, the liquid is deep red, the color of sacrament or murder. He brings it to his lips. The court watches, not with concern, with clinical detachment, the way farmers watch a canary in a coal mine. He drinks. The wine is sweet, rich. It coats his throat like silk. He waits. 10 seconds. 20. 30. His heartbeat is a drum in his ears. Is there a bitter edge beneath the sweetness? A metallic tang that does not belong? His tongue searches for the signature of hemlock, of nightshade, of arsenic ground fine as flour. Nothing. He sets the goblet down. Reaches for the bread. This is the cruelty of the profession. Not the poisons that kill quickly, but the ones that kill slow. Arsenic, favored by ambitious nephews and scorned wives, takes hours to burn through the belly. By the time the king is safe, the taster is already dying, his insides liquefying, his screams echoing through the servant quarters where no noble ear will hear. He has seen it happen. 3 tasters before him. The first died, choking on blood that poured from his mouth like wine from a broken cask. The second lasted 2 days, his body convulsing as the poison ate through his organs. The third simply fell. One moment standing, the next crumpled like parchment thrown into flame. Their families received a week's wages. A mercy, they called it. He tears the bread. The crust crackles. Inside, it is soft and white, the kind of bread he could never afford for his own children. He chews slowly, deliberately, tasting not just for poison, but for the texture of death. Sometimes it hides in the grain itself, ergot, the witch's fungus, that turns bread into madness and limbs into blackened stumps. The pheasant next. The meat is tender, falling from the bone. Grease shines on his lips. He swallows, waits. Around him, the court has already moved on, discussing taxes, marriages, wars in distant lands. He is furniture to them, functional, replaceable, a living tool that happens to breathe. But in his chest, his heart counts every beat like a monk counts prayers, because he knows what they do not. That poison is patient. That death does not always announce itself with dramatics. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it waits until the king is satisfied, until the guards have relaxed, until the taster is back in his quarters, alone, clutching his belly as the pain begins. There are no physicians for tasters, no antidotes kept in reserve. The castle's healers serve nobility, not the men who die protecting them. If poison finds his blood, he will face it alone. In a small room, on a thin mattress, with only his screams for company. And yet, he reaches for the next dish, because the contract is not just parchment and seal. It is hunger. It is 3 children with hollow eyes. It is a wife who has forgotten how to smile. It is the choice between maybe dying today and definitely starving tomorrow. The spoon touches his lips again. The silver is cold. The food is warm. And death waits in every bite, patient as winter, silent as snow. He swallows. And prays the king enjoys his meal. The executioner, the keeper of the blade. The axe weighs 14 pounds. He knows because he has lifted it every dawn for 12 years. Knows the balance of the handle worn smooth by palms and sweat. Knows the edge honed sharp enough to split a hair suspended in candlelight. Knows the sound it makes cutting through air, a whisper that ends in thunder. His name is spoken in taverns with lowered voices. Children cross the street when they see him coming. Priests bless themselves. Women clutch at crucifixes hanging between their breasts. He is the executioner, and he lives in the space between justice and damnation. His home sits at the edge of town, where the cobblestones end and the mud begins. No neighbors. No one wishes to live beside the man who brings death for wages. The law is clear. He cannot touch citizens in the marketplace, cannot drink from the common well, cannot sit in church with decent folk, though God supposedly forgives all sins. not his. Never his. The scaffold stands in the town square, permanent as the church, darker than the gallows beside it. The wood is stained almost black, not from weather, but from blood. 12 years of blood. Nobles and peasants. Murderers and thieves. The guilty and the accused, which are not always the same thing. Today, there is work. The bells rang at dawn. 3 tolls. The signal. He dressed in red, the color of his profession, the color that hides the spray, and walked through streets that emptied at his approach. Doors closed, shutters latched, as if death were contagious, as if his shadow carried plague. The condemned man is already on the platform when he arrives. Young, perhaps 20. His crime was theft. 3 loaves of bread and a silver cup from a merchant's home. In another kingdom, this might earn a flogging, a branding. Here, the magistrate was in foul temper, and the merchant had connections. So the boy will die. He kneels in the center of the scaffold, hands bound behind his back, a priest murmuring Latin beside him. The words are meant to comfort. They do not. The boy's eyes are wide, white-rimmed like a horse that smells fire. His lips move in prayer or plea. It makes no difference now. The executioner climbs the steps slowly, deliberately. This is part of the theater, part of the deterrent. Let them see death coming. Let them count each footfall like a funeral bell. He does not look at the crowd. He learned long ago not to see their faces, the ones who come to jeer, the ones who bring children, teaching them early that the world is cruel and law is absolute, the ones who watch with hungry eyes, feeding on horror the way ravens feed on battlefields. He positions himself, tests his footing. The wood is slick. It always is. He plants his boots wide, adjusting for balance. The axe rises, 14 pounds of iron and oak catching the morning sun. The boy whimpers. Close your eyes, the executioner says quietly. It is the only mercy he can offer, the only words he speaks on the scaffold. Some listen, some do not. This boy does. His eyes squeeze shut. Tears cut tracks through the dirt on his cheeks. The executioner breathes. In. Out. Centering himself. This is craftsmanship. Precision. A clean death is a kindness in a world where most deaths are anything but. He has seen men botch this. Axes that bounce off bone, requiring 2 swings, 3, the condemned screaming through a neck half severed. He has sworn on whatever remains of his soul that he will never be that man. The axe rises higher. Time stretches. The crowd holds its breath. Somewhere, a dog barks. He swings. The blade falls with the weight of judgment, the speed of God's own lightning. There is a sound, wet and final, and then the boy's head tumbles, rolling twice before stopping at the priest's feet. The body slumps. Blood pools, streaming between the boards, dripping onto the stones below where it will stain and darken and eventually fade. But never completely. Never. The crowd exhales. Some cheer. Some cross themselves. Some simply turn and walk away, satisfied that justice, or something wearing its mask, has been served. The executioner lowers his axe. His hands do not shake. They never do. Not during. Only after. Alone in his house at the edge of town, where no light reaches and no voice calls his name with kindness. He will sharpen the blade tonight. 14 pounds of iron that must stay perfect. Because tomorrow, or the day after, or the week beyond, the bells will ring again. 3 tolls. And he will climb the scaffold and deliver the death that law demands, and God will judge. His contract is written in blood, and it never expires. The plague doctor walking among the dying. The mask is leather and nightmare. A long beak, curved like a vulture's, stuffed with dried flowers and crushed herbs, rosemary, lavender, camphor, anything to mask the smell of death that clings to plague houses like fog to a graveyard. Glass eyepieces, round and dark, turn his gaze inhuman. The wide-brimmed hat casts his face in shadow. The long, waxed coat rustles with each step, black as a funeral shroud. He is the plague doctor, and he walks where even priests fear to tread. The street is silent. Not the peaceful silence of sleep, but the terrible quiet of abandonment. Doors are marked with red crosses, the sign that pestilence has entered, that death is already counting the inhabitants. Windows are shuttered. No smoke rises from chimneys. The only sound is his footsteps on cobblestones slick with waste and something darker. He stops before a door. The red paint is still wet. Fresh. This house was marked this morning. Inside, they are in the first stages. The fever, the chills, the confusion. By tonight, the buboes will appear. Black swellings in the groin, the armpits, the neck. Lymph nodes turn to rotting fruit, stretching skin until it splits and weeps pus the color of old sin. He knocks with his cane, a long wooden stick he uses to examine patients without touching them, to lift blankets and clothing, to point and probe while maintaining distance. Not that distance matters. He knows this, has known it since he signed the contract with the city council, since he accepted the purse of coins that bought his expertise and likely his life. Plague doctors rarely survive their tenure. The door opens. A woman, gaunt and hollow-eyed, her hands trembling. She does not speak, does not need to. He can smell it already, the sweet rot stench of the sickness seeping through the doorway like something with weight and will. Inside, the house is dim. One candle burns, struggling against the darkness. Two children huddle in the corner, clutching each other. On the bed, a man writhes beneath soiled blankets, his skin sheened with sweat, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The plague doctor approaches. Through the glass eyes of his mask, he sees what he has seen 1,000 times before. The fever, flush, the delirium. The man's hands claw at his neck where the first bubo has erupted. An obscene bulge, purple-black, hot to the touch. By tomorrow, it will be the size of an apple. By the day after, if he lives that long, it might burst, spraying infection across anyone foolish enough to be near. How long? The woman whispers. 2 days, he says. His voice is muffled through the mask, hollow and distant. Perhaps 3. She knows what this means. There is no cure, no remedy blessed by saints or boiled by apothecaries that will turn this tide. The plague is absolute. The plague is hungry. And it does not negotiate. He inspects the children next, lifts their chins with his cane, peers at their necks, their armpits, searching for the telltale swelling. The oldest boy has a fever. The youngest might be spared or might simply be hours behind. Vinegar, he tells the woman. Wash everything in vinegar. Burn the bedding when he dies. Do not touch the body with bare hands. She nods. She will not follow these instructions. No one does. Love is stronger than fear, and mothers have buried children with their own hands since the world began. She will cradle him when the end comes, will kiss his cooling forehead, will weep into his hair, and the plague will thank her for it. The doctor leaves coins on the table, payment for the visit, though what good is silver when bread has vanished and the markets are empty? He moves to the door. Behind him, the man moans. A sound without words, a sound that belongs to animals and the damned. Outside, the air is barely fresher. The city reeks. Mass graves are being dug beyond the walls, pits so deep they require ladders to climb out, filled layer upon layer with bodies that have stopped being people and become only numbers. 40 today, 60 tomorrow, 100 by week's end. He walks to the next Red Cross, and the next, and the next. His contract is for 6 months. He has survived 2. The odds are arithmetic and grim. Most plague doctors last 8 weeks before the sickness finds them, before the fever comes, before they too join the carts that roll through streets at dawn, the driver calling, "Bring out your..."